they didn't exist before humans existed, you know. It's an idea we came up with, and so it's an idea that we can easily manipulate to fit what we want it to fit, you know. As I said in the intro lecture, you know, the thinker thinks and the prover proves. And statistics are a great example of that. So anyways, end of rant. Testimonial evidence. Testimonial evidence is of varying degrees. It depends who's giving the testimony, who's talking. Like right now, I'm giving you testimonial evidence about Trivium method. You know, so this is me, and I'm telling you my experience, what I use it for, you know, what I've observed. And so it depends. It depends on who's giving you testimony and what your opinion of that person's validity or objectivity is, you know. And it's often very hard with testimonial evidence, you know, because there's not a lot of emphasis on, you know, checking someone's actual real history, real you know, character on a subject. There's not an emphasis on that, you know. Usually people are sort of given the appearance of authority, you know, in the sense of I have a doctor in front of my name, or I have a PhD or some other degree at the end of my name, or something like that, and that's my credentials, you know. So I don't have to tell you, you know, my story, or have a link to, you know, how my actual process of discovering this theory or anything like that. So and even more so with politicians. That's a whole other thing. I'm gonna keep politics as much out of this as I can. It definitely relates to the field of politics, but it's just as far as that, and as far as media deception, you know, I could talk about that and give you examples of that for hours. So I just kind of try to keep it on the subject and not get into specifics like that, because this is the basis for all this, you know. As I said, like if I did a longer class, I would get into more applied practical situations of applying Trivium, and maybe towards the end of the class we will a little bit, but those mountains are calling me. I'm really feeling it. I can't wait to go to the mountains, and I'm really excited about it, and I'm going to do my best with this, but just saying, I will come back to it though. I will. I'm going to be, this is something I'm very passionate about and really care about, so this is just the beginning. This is not the total sum of what I have to say on the subject at all. So anyways, anecdotal evidence. You know, I mean, sometimes it can really be useful, you know, anecdotal in the terms of an anecdote, you know. Another good synonym for that would be like a parable. You know, like in this situation, this happened, and then that happened, you know, so, and that was bad. So in this situation where this is happening, that means this is going to happen, and that means that is bad, you know. So, you know, it's an anecdote. It's not directly applied to the situation. It's very very partial. It's very biased. It's definitely taking a situation and looking at it from a certain point of view. And you know, you have to keep that in mind, and this is where we're getting into this idea of varying degrees of evidence and their validity in a certain situation. You know, there are certain situations where anecdotal evidence can really matter, and then there's other times where it doesn't. You know, it doesn't apply to the situation. The situations are too different. But as I was saying, in grammar, you really need to, at first, just kind of get a broad spectrum. So at first, you're really going to want to consider anecdotal evidence and how much it really applies to a particular situation. And on the link that I give you for the 4 types of evidence, it says it's often dismissed as untrustworthy and meaningless. And it's underutilized. But it says it can actually be very useful for disproving generalizations, because all you need is one example that contradicts a claim. But again, that's kind of getting into fallacious territory, where it's like, you know, I don't have any actual evidence against what you're saying, but in this other situation that happened, you know, X happened which made Y occur, therefore Z, you know. So, I mean, it's kind of a slippery slope kind of logic. But again, just like with fallacies, you know, one of the fallacies is the fallacy, where just because something is fallacious doesn't make it incorrect. Sometimes fallacies are right on, and actually one of the things that I did when I first came across the fallacies and really started debating and talking a lot online with people who would throw these fallacies at me, is I went through and I made a list of the 10 most common fallacies, and then I made a sort of counter list of the examples where the fallacy would be incorrect, where it's not true, you know. And that's the case, you know. Just because something is fallacious doesn't always mean it's incorrect. And that's why the fallacy is there, to remind people of that. But anyways, kind of getting ahead of myself. That's logic, not grammar. So then the next kind of evidence is analogical evidence. And it says it's also underutilized. And I mean, it's really similar to anecdotal evidence. It's sort of the same thing. Let me see here. It says, you work for a company that is considering turning some land into a theme park. On that land there happens to be a river that your bosses think would make a great whitewater rafting ride. They've called on you to assess whether or not that ride would be a good idea. Since the land in question is as yet undeveloped, you have no casual reports or statistics to refer to. In this case, you look to other rivers with the same general shape to them, attitude, etc., and see if any whitewater rafting casualties have occurred on those rivers. And so you're not using an actual instance of that particular claim of, you know, how many people have died on a particular river. And, you know, that's just the example they use. It's kind of cheesy, but that's the idea, is that it's an analogy. You know, you're not using direct evidence of, well, on this particular river X amount of people have died during whitewater rafting trips, you know. So again, that's sort of slippery slope logic. That's not really direct evidence of testimonial evidence or statistical evidence, you know. So then, you know, the other kinds of, you know, video. If you have video evidence of something, if you have an audio recording, you know, that would basically be testimonial evidence, you know. That's a different kind of testimonial evidence, you know. So testimonial evidence can be complete hearsay, just, you know, what the neighbor heard next door, but it can also be direct video evidence of something going on. But even with something like that, you have to consider your source. You know, video can be doctored. You can edit video nowadays easily and leave little evidence that you have. And you know, in the modern day of disinformation, you know, things get staged these days. There's a lot of different kinds of evidence about what's really going on as far as staged events in the media. Definitely not getting into that right now, but it happens. So those are the 4 kinds of evidence, and hopefully you've taken a look at that and read that on your own. That's important stuff. Alright. So, I've covered most of what I want to talk about. I think I said everything I want to say about evidence. Check out my notebook here. One more thing before I wanted to get into the research process itself, although this all relates to research, is with grammar, with terminology, and with excuse me just a sec here, with etymology. I've always really been very much into language in general. It fascinates me. It's a really weird thing when you really think about it, you know, like what does a baby think in before they learn words? What's going on in their mind, you know, before they learn a language? They're still thinking. You know, you can look at a baby and tell it's processing information in some way, you know. But we create these languages, you know, that sorts information, and you know, a lot of that is picture symbols is what we use, you know, as you know, we coordinate through our observations of pictures outside of us, and then store them as pictures inside. And that's pretty much what language is, you know, is spoken language is a series of sounds I'm making with my mouth right now that means something to you. And you know, same with written language. It's a series of scrawls on a piece of